All right, everyone. Welcome in to episode 45. This is being episode 45 of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. Sorry for fumbling the intro. Jeez, was. But anyway, it's October 13th, 2022. It's a Thursday night, 2 days before the third Saturday of October in Eastern Tennessee. And you know what that means if you're a college football fan. As a huge match between Alabama and Tennessee. We'll get into that way later. But joining me to talk everything American and Brazilian sports. And by the way, if you don't know what this is the only podcast that talks both American and Brazilian sports. Is my good friend Gustavo Tomazeli down from Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil. Gus, how are you doing here on this Thursday evening?
Doing great, doing great. It just came up on my Facebook, memories. Today marks 1 year that we decided to start this podcast. So I remember you commenting about when it's going to be our 1 year. Yeah, so today was the day we decided to start this podcast. Can't believe we made a year into this podcast, 45 episode, going strong. As you said, there's no other podcast in the world that talks about two countries and their world of sports, their sports, their controversies and everything. And so we're going to do things a little different tonight. We're going to start with the Brazilian
Mm-hmm.
topic because I'm riled up. I'm ready to go full mode
Yeah,
because,
Gus is ready to go on this one. He is
yeah,
ready to go.
because
All right,
yesterday
so
night,
set the
oh, go
scene.
ahead. Because yesterday night was the game one of the Brazilian Cup final between Corinthians and Flamengo. The whole country was waiting for this game. It was a month of expectations since the semifinals back in mid-September. As you can see for people watching on Facebook, there was a beautiful display of a hawk, the Corinthian symbol made by the fans. Was really pretty. Even the FIFA's president Gianni Fantino was here in Brazil to watch this great game, you know, and it wasn't a it was a good game. Flamengo, I think, was better. You saw the highlights. I For our social media audience, I won't put it because then YouTube and Facebook will flag me. But you saw the highlights, Nick. Flamengo had more opportunities, had better chances to score because, of course, they have a better roster, better, especially a better starting 11 on offense. They had their all starters for the game, especially the four players on offense: Arrascaeta, Everton Ribeiro, Gabriel Barbosa, Pedro. So they were better on offense. But Corinthians was much prepared than when they had a matchup back in early in late August for the quarterfinals of Libertadores. I think they didn't let Flamengo get close to the area, and when they got close, they had to shoot. And Casio had a really great night, two great saves, but Corinthians had two great opportunities. One with Yuri Alberto, and another one with with Gustavo Silva. But the big play that everyone is talking about, and I want to go into it. It was around. It was in the second half uh, when Fabio Santos crossed it, when Gustavo Silva crossed the ball, and then the ball came into the penalty area, and then Leo Pereira deflected the ball with apparently was his hand because when the ball came down, it touched his left hand that was loose, and the issue is this handball is very hard because there's no like a straight rule. I compare a lot with this now roughing call, is a lot left to interpretation. And when the left interpretation to the referees, one decides one thing, another decides another thing. Shout out to my big friend Adilson, Corinthians fan. Um, and when you
Yeah, shout
decide,
out to you, Dilson.
and when you left for referee interpretation, then it's a lot on what you find, especially on camera. Then, good decision by Braulio, the referee, to ask the VAR, hey guys, what did they saw? And today the audio of the VAR was released, and then basically they were trying to see if the ball touches Leo Pereira's belly, which it didn't because they deflected on Yuri Alberto, and then it came straight into Léo Pereira's left hand that was loose. So for me, it was inconceivable that 4 referees, not 1, not 2, not 3, 4 referees into the VAR cabinet did not see this ball touching Léo Pereira's hand. It is inconceivable. And not even to call Braulio, the referee, and be like, hey, come and see on the VAR screen that we have on the field so you can decide. Because basically the referee were like, hey, guys up there on the VAR booth, do you guys think it was penalty? And they were all like, no, it wasn't. It touched the guy's stomach and it wasn't. So the referee were like, okay, fair, because you guys have a million replays. I only saw. And even the referee, when the audio came at first, the referee say, hey, I think it caught on his arm. So the referee were like, he had a suspicion about the deflection on his hand, on his arm. But they were like, okay, guys up there on the VAR booth, you have the million replays. I don't. What do you guys think? And they were like, oh, I don't know. Oh, I don't know. Oh yeah, it caught on his stomach, and Mike caught on his hand. But it didn't. It was obvious. When I was so excited by VAR when it come first introduction soccer back in 2016, and it came in full mode back in 2018 in the World Cup, and then in Brazil arrived in 2019, and we're like, okay, now we're gonna have a million replays for the referees. They're gonna have equipment. They're gonna have tools to see the replay, so they decide. But it didn't matter. If they had a million replays and they couldn't see the obvious, even the referee on the field had a suspicion on 2 seconds. He had 2 seconds to see the play, and he had a suspicion. And the people on there, the VAR booth, did it was ridiculous. It was, outrageous. I'm not the one to I always try to protect referees and be like, hey, they try to do the best. They had, but this was just, I'm mad. You saw the play. I want your opinion, Nick. I gave you the highlights. I gave you the play to analyze. That's my opinion.
Okay, so before I say this, let me just clarify what the rule is. So if it hits any part of his arm, then it's a penalty.
Yeah, for the latest update on this rule, especially the one that came to Brazil, was like, if the ball touches this arm or hand, loose. It has to be like, Léo Pereira was like that, loose. It wasn't like close. It wasn't like, attached to his, this upper body. It was loose. Then it's a penalty.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Because the thing I'd be looking for here is, did the ball change trajectory during the?
In my view, it did. In my view, it did. I don't know, because the ball was going straight into the goal, and then by deflecting on Léo Pereira's left arm, it kicked. You saw the trajectory. Look when the ball touches the arm, it goes down instead of straight up.
Okay, I'm looking at. Okay, so we're looking at the. Okay, so I think I was looking at the guy in the white jersey initially when
it's the red. Sorry, it's the red and black jersey behind him. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I was analyzing the wrong one then.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just so used to knowing the colors of the team. Just so sorry. Nick, Corinthians is the white. Flamengo is the red and black. The red and black is the defender. The white guy, the white T-shirt, is the striker.
Oh yeah, it definitely hit his hand. Now, okay, so his hand is definitely loose. I wonder. So in the rule, is there anything about intentions? Because obviously,
it used to, but now with this latest clarification, was like, it doesn't matter intention. What matters is, was the if the hand or the arm was loose. That's it, clarify. Loose, was not attached to his upper body. For people watching on Facebook and YouTube, I'm going to do this. If the ball touches here, no, because it's attached. But if the ball touches here, yes, because it wasn't attached. It doesn't matter if the guy intended or not. And Adilson watching us, I bet he's mad. Adilson, você aposta tá bravo. A gente tá falando da decisão do VAR que prejudicou o Corinthians.
I'll say this. So definitely, according to the rule as you described to me, yes, that should have been a penalty. But then I think what you have to ask is, should that be a penalty? Because I don't. It's clear to me he wasn't intentionally trying to touch the ball with his hand. When the ball gets kicked into the box, I mean, there's a million ways it could ricochet off. I think it'd be ridiculous to give a penalty kick to Corinthians there just because the ball hits the guy's hand. I understand that that's the rule, and in that situation, they should have rewarded Corinthians with that penalty kick. But I don't know. I think the rule seems kind of too harsh to me.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like this hand, and there's no solution because if you put intentions, then it will left for the a referee to interpret the intentions on a fraction of a second, and there's no amount of replay that can analyze intentions. It's like
Right.
and there's no solution because what you're gonna let people use their hands on soccer, like catch the ball? No. So
Yeah,
I
I mean, honestly, NASCAR's been having this problem too recently. There's been a ton of penalties recently, and a lot of them have come down to, did the driver intentionally do something to break the rules? Um, for example, there's a situation a couple weeks ago where William Byron, under caution, he was going to just give Denny Hamlin a bump. At least he says that's all he was going to do, just to show his displeasure with something that happened on the racetrack. But when he bumped him, he spun him out and ruined his race. Um, so initially NASCAR penalized him 50 points and like $50,000, but then that penalty ended up getting overturned, even though Hamlin totally got wrecked by him under caution over this whole intent situation. So you're right, definitely in soccer too, that would apply in any sport. If we have to, because I mean, this goes back to almost like the law of what is, because you think about it, a lot of crimes, it comes down to what was the intent of the person when they committed this action.
yeah, like I
And
feel like a good example is drunk driving. There in Brazil and America is a lot of like, did the guy had intention to kill the other driver or and the passengers in the other car? Like, you know, it's hard to interpret it because in one hand, be like he did not have the intention to, because he had an accident, but the other the other lawyer would say, hey, when he was driving under the influence of alcohol, he had all the intentions to cause an accident and kill people.
yeah. And obviously, a handball is nothing like, drunk driving. And obviously there's some things that are some actions are so egregious in the real world that, it doesn't matter what your intent was, you know, uh, you're going to have to suffer consequences. But I feel like for something like this, I don't know, but I don't know how you would even. I mean, I feel like you'd almost have to be like, okay, did you kind of ready your hand to do it? Where did you put yourself in a position that would increase the likelihood of your hand touching the ball? I don't know. It doesn't seem like this guy did either one of those things. But I do agree with you that as the rule is written and as it's described to me, that should have been a penalty.
So
And the fact that four VAR judges could clearly see that the ball hit his hand, and they didn't rule that, it definitely seems kind of suspect. Okay, let me ask you this: where is the VAR headquartered, and how close is that to Corinthians, stadium?
They usually have a room in a stadium, like in a press box, separated, dedicated to VAR. They had all the installation, everything. All the referees are there.
Oh.
They're not. I was compared to the NFL, but unlike the NFL, the VAR referees are in the stadium.
Oh, okay. That's actually really interesting. I didn't know that they actually have. So you have the set of. So every officiating crew basically is two parts. You have the on-field, on the pitch crew, and then you have the in the booth crew. It's actually kind of interesting.
Yes. It's a whole. There's a whole a whole crew of refereeing. Used to have not a lot, but now is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 referees into the referee crew. So, but on the VAR was Elton Nunes from Santa Catarina and Rafael Traci, Roberto Perassi, and Rodrigo Ferreira. There were no, actually, it was Rodrigo Ferreira, Elton Nunes, and Rafael Tracy. It was three VAR referees, only solely to dedicate the VAR reviews on in
And
the
didn't you say
stadium.
there was a shortage of VAR referees a few weeks ago? Because I know we were talking about this at one point, how there's not enough good VAR referees in
Yes,
Brazil.
yes,
And
yes. I pointed
it
out.
seems like to me that it would be more one, it'd be more economical. I mean, Brazil's a huge country, right? Like for them to have to travel from stadium to stadium, like all of these referees, instead you could take the very best VARs and put them in a room in Rio de Janeiro or Sao Paulo and let them referee all the games from there. I mean, and if the NFL can do it, why not? Why not the Brazilian Premier League?
Yes, I agree with you. At first, if I think but I compare a lot the Brazilian referee kind of schematics to the SEC, not to the NFL, because as we discussed before, like the SEC, Brazilians referees are not 100% professionals. These are like their second jobs. They get paid well, but it's not like they're 100. They're full time jobs. This is like their part time jobs. They're like they have other professions. You know, I know what the a good referee. He's like a sports secretary in a city nearby here uh, to Americana, Santa Barbara, and he has like to leave his office and then go to one match referee, another one to be the VAR, and uh, so it goes back to like
Yeah, and that will cause mistakes too. Like if this is not their dedicated jobs, I mean, they can't spend all day looking at it. Like uh, I mean, a part-time referee, no matter how good he is never going to be as good as someone who sits in there and does it full time because it's a long rule book you got to memorize. There's so many inconsistencies, and especially if that rule has changed. Maybe those VAR referees were thinking of the old rule versus the new rule.
Yeah, that's true. But for me, they were thinking more about if the ball touched the guy's stomach. In my view, it didn't. I clearly the ball deflected on his like because I look it up here. So uh, let me see. There was a update version that the international board stated back in April and back in August. Like if the ball touches your hand or arm deliberately, like dislocating the hand towards the ball is an infraction, or if the ball touches your hand and arm when the hand and arm amplifies your body structure in a non-natural way. So we can apply this rule to this play because Léo Pereira amplified his body by extending his arm, even in a non deliberate way, in a unintentional way, but it amplified and it deflected clearly. So if we analyze this rule as it was stated back in August by the international board, it's a penalty.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like it. Absolutely, it has to be a penalty as written by the rule book. But clearly, the message should not get to the VAR crew. So we'll have to see exactly how this moves going forward. Because I can only imagine this will probably cause an internal review for how
Yeah.
controversial this particular play was.
Oh yeah, like, probably, but it's gonna be like I know the drill. Like Corinthians president is gonna set up a full like an official statement complaining about the decision, say it wasn't fair, complaining to Brazilian Confederation. They might give some sort of punishment, probably light punishment to the referees, and we go on, and then we forget about it because there's next week's game, but you know, my biggest point of all that needs to be clarified is not only the play itself, but like, so what do you need the VAR monitor review on the field? So why do we need that? If the people VAR on the booth decides by themselves and don't let the referee on the field, the main referee, the one that makes the actual decision, see the play. That's what I'm mad about. They shouldn't be like, oh, this play is too doubtful. Come and look and see. Then Braulio couldn't make the decision. Braulio da Silva Machado, he was the referee. He should be the one who had all the review, all the replays, all the monitors, all the the images to make his decision. Not let third parties like those three VAR referees make the decision for him. And now he got screwed because technically he made the wrong decision when he was let the game go, according to me and other people analyzing, or if a lot of Corinthians fans think like me. But if he won the one to look and be like, I decided, then the VAR people be exempt and be like, hey, he looked at play. That's what I'm mad about.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that he didn't get to see it. And, you have to ask then who is the head referee? If the VAR is just going to be able to make any decision they want without the input of the head referee, then the head referee is not the head referee. Like the head referee needs to have the final say in every decision. I would assume
Yeah,
that's how it works in every other sport.
because like for example in college or even pro, and I imagine college football, even if you have the replay reviews, you know in New York in the NFL and the people in the SEC have, the final view of the play is the referee on the field, right? He saw the play, he makes his decision.
Exactly, and that's the way it should be. So it's once again, it's like it feels like every week we talk about VAR in Brazil because it just seems like it just never gets solved and
Yeah,
never.
I think
So,
it should have been like the people in the VAR should help the VAR referees up there should, but be like, hey, Braulio, come in yourself and check, or even the referees be like, hey, can we at least when there's some sort of a confusion up there and not a unanimous decision, be like, can we look at as well? Because I don't know. But as much controversy this place was, because the thing is, Corinthians with this draw couldn't didn't use the full advantage of his home field advantage. Corinthians crowd was amazing. Was the new record for Corinthians games. 47,000 fans. The for Corinthians games was the record. The record for all soccer games was in the World Cup in the opening match between Brazil and Croatia. 65,000 fans when there was like the 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 standees, the non-permanent stands. But I feel like still Corinthians still has a chance. What makes me feel Corinthians has a chance is the way Corinthians defend. But it's gonna be hard. Flamengo is gonna come full speed ahead. They're probably gonna have to rest all their starters on this week's Brasileirão game. You know, and I still feel Corinthians has a chance, but if you had to pick me, Flamengo now is going to be the champion.
yeah, I mean, definitely getting that, not getting the win at home it's just never good in those scenarios. Like you have to get those wins in order to win, especially in soccer. Flamengo is definitely set up very well.
Yeah, so that was for the Brazilian Cup final, which the second game is going to take place next Wednesday, October 19, 8:45 p.m. Eastern time, 9:45 p.m. Brazil time. And if you want to watch in America, now they're free broadcasting on the One Football app. Their broadcast last year
One football app.
it used to be on YouTube on a channel on a YouTube channel. Now it's going to be on One Football app that you can watch for free in the United States. In Brazil, it's going to broadcast by Globo and Sport TV, and it's like the main channels. And uh, so that was the Brazilian Cup final. Real quick, the Brasileirao, the Brazilian Championship, Brazilian Premier League is on week 32. Palmeiras has 10 points ahead. They play their arch rival Sao Paulo this weekend at home. I expect them to win, but I don't think it's going to be easy. They come on a draw, but I think Palmeiras is going to win this game. It's not going to be easy. You're playing your arch rivals, so as a rival, you want to, you know, get in the way of your other rivals' title game or title run. But I think Palmeiras is still going to be the champion. I think this game's going to be one of those memorable games. Going to be like a hard game. They're going to win and be closer to the title. And I feel like that's. I think Palmeiras is just 10 points is is a big lead, but I don't think they're gonna lose it this lead. So that's it for Brazilian news. After I got my rant, the Brazilian Cup referee. So let's start with the Knoxville is the capital of sports this weekend, right?
I would say so. I mean, there's some huge games across college football this week, but this is the first time since 1989, the third Saturday in October, is a battle of undefeated teams. And there's actually some new news I wanted to bring up. I literally just dropped about 7 minutes ago. The guest picker for College Game Day has been announced. Gus, do you want to take a... Nope. Is the quarterback himself. It might even be better. Peyton Manning.
I'm not surprised. He's an ESPN product, so
Yeah, I'm definitely not surprised. Now, what a lot of people are going to say is Peyton Manning's bad luck. Anytime he shows up, the Vols lose. But my counterpoint to that is the Vols, I feel like, have been breaking a lot of bad streaks this year. Case in point, let's briefly kind of just talk about the game this past Saturday, LSU. The Vols over the past 10, 15 years have been horrible against SEC West teams. They've only won like a handful of games because obviously they've lost to Alabama every single year. They beat Mississippi State in 2019. They beat Auburn in 2018. But before then, it was something like 2010, I think, 2011, when they had previously beaten an SEC West team. And, to go into Death Valley, Death Valley is supposed to be one of the top 5 intimidating stadiums in all of college football. And to run them out of the stadium, to me, like I've been watching since 2006 as a fall, since I was 8 years old. That to me was the most impressive performance I've ever seen Tennessee put on. Like, I understand LSU is not a great team, but still, most teams wouldn't go into LSU and do that because that's supposed to be Death Valley. That's supposed to be one of the toughest places to play. And by the end, Rocky Top had taken over. The Vol fans, I mean, my God, I wish I was down in Louisiana last weekend because the amount of orange no stands were insane. And if it was like that on the road in Baton Rouge for LSU, I can't imagine what the atmosphere is going to be like Saturday. Just here in Chattanooga, even all the orange around town all week, all the excitement. Of course, obviously, all the Bama fans are out too. They're like, "Oh, we're going to beat you again. We own you, this and that." But it just feels like, if the time has come for Tennessee to end all the streaks, to kind of put themselves truly back in the top of college football. I can't hear you, Gus. You're muted.
I put the highlights here so we can, kind of analyze the game as you were doing. This first play was the alpha play. It's like, we came here to destroy you. I think I knew Tennessee was going to win this game about when this play happened. When they scrambled again on their return team, and Tennessee took advantage of that and opened 7-0 on their first play. I knew the game was over.
Right, and then Brian Kelly started coaching like an idiot as well. Like some of those fourth downs he went for, were just crazy. Like the 4th and 10 on his own 46, that gave us free points. Like, what are you doing? Like you are not giving your team at all a chance for success against a high-powered offense. I mean, Hendon Hooker did not have his best game, to be honest. Obviously, that throw might have been his best throw, though, he's made at Tennessee. The one he made the Hyatt there early in the second quarter, go up 20-0. But I think what was even more impressive is our ability to run the ball. I mean, we ran for 236 yards in this game. Jabari Small had a phenomenal game. just dominated. And, for us to win on Saturday, that's going to be required again. But obviously, Alabama's defense is a lot better than LSU's, especially in the front seven. They have potentially the number one pick in the entirety of the NFL draft next year in Will Anderson. And that's not the only stud they have up there up front. They've got several guys who will be NFL players here in a couple of years. And of course, I guess they always do. I mean, it's Alabama. They always have blue chip recruits. At least this time, though, for Tennessee, they've got several players in offense that are going to be pro in a couple of years as well. And it just feels like, we finally have the firepower on offense to do what we need to do to be successful against Alabama. Now, on the flip side of this game, obviously the number one question is Bryce Young going to play? And nobody knows. And nobody knows really the circumstance behind it. And is Bryce Young, could he gut it out and go out there, but our advisors telling him not to play? Is he thinking about his draft stock going into this game? Have they crafted a plan around Jalen Milroe to have potential for him to have success? But I feel like, when you look at the Tennessee defense, our strength is our rush defense. Our pass defense is one of the worst in the country. Like, it's not great. Even in this game, we have 300 passing yards to Jaden Daniels. But even then, a lot of those yards were in garbage time. So if they go out with Milroe as their QB, then I can only imagine that's a significant negative for Alabama because their ability to throw the ball is going to be significantly hindered. Just because Milroe is nowhere near as good of a passer. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised. I've heard some people bring this up. I wouldn't be surprised if this were true. Ty Simpson. Tennessee fans will remember him. He is from Martin, Tennessee, in West Tennessee. 5-star quarterback. He chose Alabama over Tennessee. You might remember this too. Gus. Lifelong Tennessee fan, but ended up choosing to go to Alabama. Because remember, this is at the end of the Pruitt era. We were in a terrible spot and didn't want to commit to Tennessee at the time. If Bryce Young can't go, I bet you see Ty Simpson at some point in this football game for Alabama. Because the word is he is a better thrower than Milroe. At least that's what a lot of Bama fans seem to think. At least that seems to be the consensus. And I think Bama, if they're going to win this game, will have to throw the ball quite a bit. And you can have success on this defense in the back. Of course, we know we've lost Warren Burrell for the year. Of course, Jalen McCullough is in a limbo because of an incident where some idiot ran into his apartment, and it caused him to defend his apartment. So certainly, I hope he does play from what it sounds like he should play. But, will he play? I don't know.
Yeah, and speaking of play, Nick Saban talked about Bryce Young playing for Tennessee or not.
Bryce is getting reevaluated today. I don't really know much. I hadn't talked to Doc, since he did that. Hopefully, we're going to try to get him ready to play this week. But this is something that, nobody can predict, how quickly this is going to give him an opportunity to be able to go out and do what he needs to do. And, we'll see as the week progresses. But I don't have an update.
Yes, that was Nick Saban, kind of. And this reminds me a lot of the 2019 season when Tua had an injury, And do you think this Tennessee can be 2019's LSU? They came out of nowhere and had a quarterback, had a stellar season as Joe Burrow had, and then the game that solidified that was winning at home versus a Bama team without Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, so that 2019 LSU team, so they beat Bama on the road, right? And Tua played in that LSU game hurt, but he still lit them up. And it feels like Bryce Young, if he's going to win this game, is going to have to go out there and play hurt. Because, it just feels like Bama's going to have to score a ton of points to keep up with Tennessee. And that seems crazy to say this, because I've never been so confident in Tennessee's ability to go into a game against Alabama and be able to score. But I just, if you look at the statistics, Tennessee is the top offense in the country right now. I am not worried about our offense's ability to move the football. The thing that gives me pause is, if Bryce Young goes out there and throws the ball and is able to throw the ball well, that's a significant disadvantage for us because Bryce Young is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Now, thankfully, we also have one of the best quarterbacks in the country too. And that's what makes this game so, just from a pure football standpoint, it makes it so interesting. And, this is going to be, this could go down as one of the top 5 games of the year. Like, for sure. If this lives up to the hype, this will be one of the games we look back on at the end of the year in several years and think, wow, that was an amazing moment. And obviously for Tennessee, if you win this football game, then it almost kind of washes the sins of the last 15 years away. Like, this is the moment for Tennessee football,
and
to potentially get out of the doldrums.
And do you think if Tennessee wins, and you said it best, wash all the frustration over the past 15 years? Because since the end of Philip Fulmer coaching era in 2008, Tennessee fans went through a roller coaster of 4 different coaches with different styles and different methods, but they had one thing in common, under-delivered and failure. From Derek Dooley to Bud Jones to Jerry Pruitt, was 3 coaches that, they, especially Pruitt and Butch, they had their moments. The end of 29, the 29 late 29, the end of the season 2019, early 2020 was the Jerry Pruitt moment that went downhill really fast. Pruitt 2016 was his moment, and then 2017 went down fast. If Tennessee wins this game, I feel like it solidifies also what a good hire was, not only Josh Heupel, but also Danny, the athletic director.
Oh yeah, White.
Danny White.
For Heupel, if he wins this game, the legacy is already going to be in stone for him. If he comes out and he's already beaten Florida and they can come out and beat Alabama too, like, the legacy would be there for him. And, Butch, remember, he had a similar opportunity to this in 2016, and you got Brown stand by Alabama, and it kind of went downhill from there. But we saw some chinks in the armor with that 2016 Alabama team, or the 2016 VOLS team, excuse me. Remember, they had to go to overtime to beat Appalachian State. They were down 14-0 to Virginia Tech. They were down 21-0 to Florida, down 17-0 to Georgia. And, eventually that inconsistently caught up with them. This Tennessee team has not been doing that. The only real, obviously they started off slow against Pittsburgh, but they were in control for the rest of the game. Florida, their defense wasn't great, but they were ahead the entire time. And of course, LSU, that 2016 team did not have a game like LSU early on, where they just annihilated a good team on the road. And I think, this team to me is way better than the 16 team. As I said, the only real deficiency to me is the secondary. Even special teams like Chase McGrath has been an excellent kicker. He has basically hit everything except for, I think, 1 or 2 field goals all year. He's hit all the extra points. So he's been very consistent. Paxton Brooks had an awesome punt in this game because he's only punted, I think, like once or twice in the past 2 games, but both of the punts were really, really good. So and obviously on kickoffs, he's done a really good job. And of course, he kicked that first kickoff in such a way that put LSU in a position to fumble. And then obviously D. Williams had a great kick return. And you got to remember, we talk a lot about offense, defense, special teams. It's a third of the game. That's one of the 7 maximums. It's about special teams. And this Tennessee team does a really good job of special teams. And that also reflects the coaching job of Josh Heupel, because good coaches emphasize special teams. And almost feels like that this game, too, could come down to special teams. And I think Tennessee does a really good job at that area of football. In terms of who wins, I don't even know if I really want to give a prediction because I don't know. It depends on what Bama does at quarterback. Because I'll say if Bryce Young goes out there and plays and he is healthy enough, then I think it's going to be really hard for Tennessee to win this game just because I think Bryce Young will make enough plays. And I think Tennessee is going to struggle some running, which is going to put all the pressure on Hooker. And we're going to find out truly if Hooker is this year's Joe Burrow. Because remember, Joe Burrow went to Tuscaloosa and, basically that was the day he wrote his check for the number 1 pick. Is when he went to Tuscaloosa and lit them up for 46 points. I mean, that was the day Joe Burrow became a superstar. Hendon Hooker has an opportunity on Saturday as well. And I'll say this, if he goes out there and has a Florida-type performance and he lights them up and leads Tennessee to a win, then it'll be time to really start talking about where does Hendon Hooker rank all time. And I think you'd have an argument of him being a top 5 to UT quarterback. In fact, I think the argument's already there in terms of just pure play. I mean, obviously you have Peyton at the top, but beyond him, obviously you got your Condra Holloway's, you have T. Martin, Casey Clausen, Andy Kelly. I think Hendon Hooker, especially if he goes out there and wins on Saturday.
But one point I think for that the Hendon Hooker's legacy is going to be really big is because if you think about it, Peyton Manning, T. Martin, they came out a good era. Tennessee had a good streak for 2 decades from the.
Do you remember too, though? Peyton Manning defeated Alabama or led the ball still win over Bama in 1995 for the first time in 11 years. So Hendon Hooker does have a similar opportunity in this game to Peyton Manning in 1995.
Yeah. So that's the thing. I feel like but it compared to that, but it goes bigger because even that 11-year losing streak. But during that time, Johnny Major led good Tennessee teams for not for national championships, or like Sugar Bowls and 10-win seasons and
SEC championships.
SEC championship. But this 15 tenure, the last time Tennessee beat Bama to now has been frustration after frustration after frustration. Tennessee could even go to the SEC championship. Now, we don't talk about winning this SEC championship. Going to play in Atlanta. Tennessee had 1 year, one out of this 15 seasons.
I think too. 2015 as well. Like, if you don't blow a 4th and 14 at Florida, that one play you go to Atlanta. Like, if nothing else changes, you go to Atlanta. So and really the 15 team to me was better as well.
But 2016 was closer because they controlled their own destiny in the conference because they beat the Florida. They had control. They beat Florida and Georgia. They beat the toughest rivals in the division. They had full control, and they blew it.
Oh, I mean, you're definitely right about that. And they had all the momentum early on. But I think that's kind of part of the beauty of the opportunity Tennessee has here. I feel like every offseason we kind of ruminate about what this team could have done or what that team could have done. You see the statistics heading into this game and this 16-year winning streak that Alabama has over Tennessee. The average spread, the average margin of victory for Alabama is 25.9 points. I can remember 2 close games, truly, at least at the end of the game. I mean, 2009, of course, Mount Cody blocks the Daniel Lincoln's attempted field goal to win the game. Definitely a heartbreaker for a young fan. For me, 2015, we go up late with Josh Dobbs touchdown, but Derrick Henry comes back, scores a touchdown. But outside of those 2 opportunities, we've been blowing out virtually every single other time. And
I've been to 2 Tennessee Alabama games, 2019 and 2020, and I was thinking about it. Can you believe it? We both were in Knoxville. I was there covering for WTK, and look how different 2 seasons, 2 years apart. 2020, everybody knew Tennessee was gonna lose, and it lost badly. And I remember one question. I don't know who asked, but I remember that press conference, like, when Tennessee is gonna get close to an Alabama and Florida, when? And Pruitt didn't have an answer. But look how
because it reminds me of. I was thinking about this earlier. I remember in 2020 we're doing a show right before the Georgia game. I think I was doing a show with our good friend Alex Comas. I remember he was talking about how, because we were in the same class, Alex and I, And he said something about, this game is huge just because, for at least for the senior class here, we haven't come close to being one of these 3 teams, to being Georgia, Bama, Florida. And, I remember like sitting there at the end of the Florida game. I was with Jason, actually, Jason Wyrick, our friend, as well. And we're just sitting there at the top, and we're kind of in an empty kneeling, right? Because this was COVID, so there's only like 20,000 people in there. And it was depressing. Just knowing that, we weren't going to experience what Tennessee football should be, what I had grown up believing it to be while we were there. I wish I still had the clip, because I went and covered that last game, the Texas A&M game, like the one that happened right before Christmas in 2020. I remember going down to the field. I did like an Instagram live and just sitting down in the lower bowl of Neyland and just thinking. I think I was just talking to the audience that we had on IG Live and saying, I think I said something like virtually one day this place is going to come back, and obviously there was a lot going on because we're in the middle of a pandemic at the time, and or at least the heat of the pandemic, which I know is still going on, but at least, we were in 2020, so we were still like the vaccine hadn't come yet, and we're all having to wear masks and everything else. And so there was that component, I think, with that component of it having a dark cloud. Of course, remember that day, because, if you remember, our seat that year was next to Trey Wallace's seat when he worked for RTI. And, I remember he didn't show up to work, to show up to the game that day. And that's because he dropped his article at Jeremy Pruitt's violations. So I remember sitting down there being like, oh, good grief. What in the world is about to happen to the program? Because the program already was in a terrible position. We didn't have a good quarterback. The product was terrible. And, I'm just looking around.
And I remember.
I was just almost wondering, is this a waste of time?
Now, do you remember Tennessee was supposed to play a bowl game that year? Gosh.
Liberty Bowl, West Virginia. And when I heard we were playing a bowl game, my first reaction was, why? Why are we playing? I think I literally, because I just right around Christmas, and I turned them down, just like, I don't want to watch this team anymore. I don't want to watch another Vols game because if we play, I'm gonna have to watch it. And the team, and it's so emotionally distressing to watch that 2020 team, because I knew they could have been way better than they were, but they were just so unexciting, so boring. Like think about the great stats we've had this season. But like I looked back at some of the box scores from 2020, like the Arkansas game that year combined, I think our 2 quarterbacks, like Garrett Garantano, JT Stroud, had something like 120 passing yards in that game. Like they couldn't do anything. And I looked at that, I'm like, I can't believe that just 2 years ago, Tennessee football was that unwatchable. And now we have the number 1 offense in the country. And it just almost was like a dream of sorts.
And I feel like Tennessee fans, since they are so caught up with this whole drama they had in the past, and they still have some, trauma, they are hyped in a way that I like. They're not like, cocky. They're like, okay, we have a chance, but we I don't know if we're still on their level, but we're gonna play our hearts off.
I mean, it's like, okay, like in the best way, like I think the quote that really sums this all up, I don't know if you know the song "Dreams and Nightmares" by Meek Mill. The first line of that song is, "I used to pray for times like this to rhyme like this," and I think that, I remember playing like NCAA 14 and having like number 1 Alabama at like number 3 Tennessee, and sitting there and playing these video games and like, I don't know if thinking I'll probably never see something like this. A top 5 Alabama Tennessee game, and Lord behold, that's exactly what we're going to have here in less than 48 hours. And regardless of whatever the result is, I think the mantra Tennessee fans should have coming into this game is, I used to pray for times like this, but now we have it. And now our volunteers are going into a top 6 matchup against the dynasty of our generation in Alabama, and what is supposed to be the rivalry of the SEC. The third Saturday in October, at one point in time, was the rivalry in this conference. It has determined a ton of conference championships. It has determined national champions at time. Bear Bryant, the one coach that he said taught him more than anything else our coach ever could have taught him was Robert Nealon. It's just the amount of back and forth that's gone around in this rivalry, what it's meant to both of these fan bases, to these schools over the years. If you look at the schools themselves, there's a lot of similarities between the University of Tennessee and the University of Alabama. This game's supposed to be this big. And, for a whole generation, we have forgotten what Tennessee, Alabama is supposed to be. I'm just excited to see it finally return to its former glory. And I hope Tennessee does not disappoint the country here, because I think the country is ready to see Tennessee give Alabama everything they can handle.
No, yeah, I agree with you, Nick. I mean, as we discussed before, of course, I feel like I want to send this video to the people at Rocks All Sports WK, be like, appreciate these times. Appreciate it a lot.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm not sure who's going to be. I'm assuming Joseph's probably going to be up there. And he does a great job covering the games for WTK. And of course, I know Jack covers games as well, or whoever else might be doing it. But definitely have fun doing it, because we had, for context, I had to go. I was in the booth for 34-7 Kentucky when they won a Nealon 34-7. So, and that was brutal. So enjoy this.
I was in the booth on the last Tennessee-Alabama game in Neyland Stadium, and that was sad to watch. To watch. The game was...
I mean, I guess it could have been worse as being in uniform for Georgia State.
Oh, yeah.
As a band member. God. Yeah. But anyway, we've come such a long way. It's like, I don't know how versed in TikTok trends, but it's like the TikTok trend of like the movie Up, and the sad music at the end is like, there's like this TikTok trend that goes around. It's like, wow, I'm so proud of you. That's how I feel for Tennessee football, because it just feels like they've come such a long way, in such a small time. But
Definitely.
Do you have a score prediction? Because I don't know if I feel comfortable giving one, because I don't know what the circumstances are going to be.
My prediction is going to be Tennessee 35, Alabama 32.
You know what? My head says Alabama wins, but you know what? I believe. Give me the VOLS 38. Give me Bama 34. I believe. We'll find out in 48 hours if you were right. Before I move on to other topics real quick, though, there are some other big games across college football. They're not that are not Tennessee, Alabama. For example, we do have another top 10 game. We have Penn State at Michigan, 10 Penn State at 5 Michigan. We have number 8 Oklahoma State, number 13 TCU. That's also a battle of undefeated teams. We have number 15 NC State at undefeated number 18 Syracuse. That's a surprising team. We have number 16 Mississippi State at 22 Kentucky. And then we've got some other games I think are interesting. Like number 19 Kansas goes to Oklahoma, a team right now that's just absolutely reeling after a 4-9 loss at Texas. We have Clemson at Florida State.
Oklahoma is 0-3 in the Big 12.
I know, like it's almost like we gave them our identity. And, Oklahoma fans are probably really upset now that they fired Josh Heupel in 2014 as OC.
Yeah. And also look how the coach does, when a good coach comes and when a good coach left. Josh Heupel arrived January 2021. We were there. And look what he's done in less than 2 years. And Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma at the end of 2021. And look what Oklahoma is right now.
Yeah, and look where USC is right now. number 7, and of course they have a huge game too. I forgot to mention that one, USC Utah. Of course, Lincoln Riley. That's probably his biggest test so far for with the Trojans. But yeah, I mean USC right now would destroy Oklahoma to the chagrin of Oklahoma fans. Oklahoma has a lot of rebuilding they're going to have to do, and they're going to have to redo it fast because if they're in this shape when they come to the SEC, they're in some serious trouble. Like they could fall off the map for a couple of years if they don't get this stuff figured out. Like it's bad.
No,
but on the other hand, though, is Texas that good? I mean, there's some power ratings out there. They have Texas as a top 5 team with Quinn Ewers at quarterback, even though they have 2 losses. And they say, well, they have the 2 losses because they don't have their quarterback. Well, to me, I don't know. I'm not convinced Texas right now is one of the top 5 teams in the country because that just.
I mean, this top 5 team if the quarterback plays. I mean, it does, but if he don't play, it doesn't matter. Like you should be.
Alabama just won with their backup quarterback.
Yeah, this like we condition the ranks with one player. Football is a multiplayer, not a single player sport. I know quarterbacks are important, but as you said best, Alabama is a top 5 team in the country because they won without their starting quarterback.
Yeah, even though I think, even in this week's game, that they would be at a significant disadvantage with Jalen Milroe at quarterback against Tennessee, they would still have a shot just because of how talented they are. And obviously, they have Jahmyr Gibbs, who's a great running back. And that's someone that the VOLS will definitely have to key on in the backfield. But which one of these other games, too, are you looking forward to? I think that Oklahoma State TCU game is going to be excellent. I think that's going to be a high-tempo game, and I wish I wasn't on the same time as Alabama, Tennessee, but I'll just have to catch highlights of this later.
Honorable mention to James Madison, ranked number 25 team in the country. Their first year in the FBS, they're already ranked. I guess they're for real when they move up.
Yeah, I mean, James Madison has been like the second best program in FCS for like the past decade behind North Dakota State. So, I mean, those top tier FCS teams would be top 25 instantly in the FBS. Like, and North Dakota State, they'd be top 25 in the FBS too.
But I think North Dakota doesn't want to move because of the local rivalry. They don't want to lose the local rivalry, I think. James Madison had nothing to lose in the moving up.
That's definitely true. They would have to move both North Dakota and North Dakota State up at the same time. And I don't know if North Dakota could support 2 FBS programs.
Yeah,
I think that certainly is the problem.
Yeah, it's more viable, for them to stay in the FCS, have the rivalry, so then, it's more their reality. But George Madison is in a position in the country, the Sun Belt makes sense, is in the east part of the country. They're going to play, for example, Georgia Southern. It's not a really far drive, so.
Yeah, but Georgia Southern has been traditionally a good team as well. So that'll be a very interesting game for number 25, James Madison at Georgia Southern. Also, I really think Clemson has been playing really well. DJ Ujulele, I don't know how to say it. I think it's Ujulele. That's how you say his name. He's played really well the past couple of weeks. He has turned a corner. He has definitely proven that he should be the quarterback for Clemson, at least as of now. But this Florida State game to me is interesting because Florida State to me has played a lot better this year, but I don't know if they're there to beat Clemson. But I have a feeling this one is a night game in Tallahassee. The Florida State fans at least have had something to cheer about for the first time in a couple of years this year. It could get kind of interesting there.
Oh, yeah. And if they win the games, not like they're back, but they have something to be proud of their season.
Oh, for sure. I mean, already that win for LSU was huge for Florida State starting off 4-0. And they'll be going to, I think, a pretty decent bowl game as well. So, also Syracuse. So let's find out if Syracuse is for real. Their best win so far is Purdue or Louisville. But, neither one of those teams are that great. And NC State's not a great team either, but they're definitely on a different level, especially defensively. So we'll find out if the Orange are for real. My feeling is I think the NC State will win that game. But also, I
Yeah,
think we haven't really mentioned that. Go ahead.
no, and I was gonna say, a game looking forward to is Michigan Penn State, because Michigan have not played a true opponent, like a true contender, and Penn State has always give a hard time to Jim Harbaugh. So I think winning this game probably will solidify as like a contender for the division. And whoever wins this game is gonna fight for the division with Ohio State.
Oh, absolutely. Here's my thing with Michigan. Who have they played? I mean, their toughest opponent was Maryland so far. They were struggling on the road with Indiana. Tennessee has 3 wins that are better right now than Michigan's best win. I have a feeling Penn State could go in there and win that thing. Because remember, this team plays with no fear. Penn State went into Auburn. I know Auburn's bad, but they still went to Auburn at a place that's really hard. Just ask Alabama how hard it is to play at Auburn. Look at how they did last year. Auburn was not a good team last year, but Bama struggled to beat Auburn at Auburn. And Penn State just waltzed in there and just ran them out of the stadium. So I would not be shocked if Penn State won this game. And it's huge for both Sean Clifford and for James Franklin.
Definitely, because as James Franklin has done a good job in as a Penn State head coach, he doesn't have the big win. He has. He has a couple of big wins. I remember when he defeated, I think in 2016, number 2 Ohio State. That
right, and then won the Big Ten.
Yeah, they won the Big Ten. They almost went to the college football playoff. Was close. The closest they got to be in a college football playoff.
Right.
But if they win this game, then they'll definitely a contender for a college football playoff spot.
Yeah. In 2 weeks they play. So basically the next 3 weeks for Penn State. They play at Michigan this week. The next week they come home to play Minnesota, who is actually a pretty decent team from the Big Ten West. And then they get Ohio State at home. And if they can win this one, I think, Minnesota's a tough team, but I think they can beat them. They could be setting up a top 5 matchup of Ohio State, and that would be a massive one. And Ohio State, Penn State, it seems like on multiple occasions has been just a huge game for both of those teams. So I'm very interested to see if we get an undefeated Ohio State, undefeated Penn State, or, obviously if Michigan wins, that could set the stage for later on. You get Michigan, Ohio State, again, determining the Big Ten East like we saw last year. Of course, we know how big that would be. So a lot's going to be decided here over this week. It's interesting. I feel like that Mississippi State Kentucky game gets kind of left in the background, because 2 lower ranked teams. But Mississippi State, I'm going to be honest here, I think Mississippi State runs Kentucky out of the stadium. I think Mississippi State wins by 2 or 3 scores at least.
I think Kentucky ran out of gas. This is like 2020 Tennessee. They start really hot, then got one really hard loss, and then they're downhill from there. Like I remember, and and you can write, talk jokes about it. Oh, but you said Kentucky had a chance. I mean, they had a chance, but they didn't prove the chance to be in the fight for the college football playoff. And now they're going to have to fight for at least getting a bowl game. I mean, they're 2 games away to be bowl eligible, but, they have to, get the wins.
Right. I mean, I think they will. I think they can be at least Vanderbilt, probably Louisville. I think they got another easier game, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure what the rest of their schedule after that looks like. Of course, they got to come to Knoxville. There'll be significant underdogs there. Because here's the thing with Kentucky. If Will Levis was as good as NFL draft scouts think he is, then why is his offense so pedestrian? I understand he didn't play last week, which is part of the problem, right? Kentucky has no quarterback depth. But even when Will Levis is in there, we saw him against Mississippi. He wasn't very good in that game. He had several turnovers, and it just didn't make any sense to me why he continues to get this top 10 hype for the NFL. I mean, I guess it's his size, and I understand, I've said the same things about Josh Allen. I said the same things about Justin Herbert. And both of those guys have turned out well in the NFL. But as a college quarterback, Will Levis is nowhere close to the best one. So I don't know.
I think it's
But
gonna be it's gonna be probably one of the greatest college football weeks ever. With so many good
yeah.
matchups.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be a good one. Also, briefly, before I move on to the next topic, do you just want to take a guess of what the score of the Washington Commanders or Chicago Bears game is right now?
Score less.
Yes, and we have 2.5 minutes left until halftime, and it's 0-0. 2.5 minutes left in the first half. I've just been kind of peeking over here, and both of these offenses are just so bad.
Amazon Prime is gonna sue the NFL. It's gonna be like, I'm not gonna pay for this anymore because you only give me really, very bad games. That's the
we
second.
haven't had a touchdown in 2 weeks.
Yeah, all Michaels have not called the touchdown, in 2 weeks, for a Thursday night football game. Amazon, shoot, because even if you think about it, even the games before that, it was also the Dolphins Bengals were a fine game, but everybody remembers the Tua injury. In week 3, also a very, okay, not a very unimpressive Browns win over the Steelers. And in week 2, week 2 was, I think, the only good Thursday night football game when the Chiefs rally to win the Chargers. I think that was the only decent Thursday night football game since
the very first one was awesome, but the rest of these games have just been terrible. This has been so bad. And honestly, the Sunday night games overall, I feel like have been really bad too. Most of the primetime games I feel like have been not great. Now, the Monday night game this past week was really good between the Chiefs and the Raiders. But, I guess while we're on the topic, do you want to just go ahead and get those week 6 picks out of the way here?
Oh, week 5 we tie 8-8. Notable mentions. You got the Chiefs right over me with the Raiders, but I got the Colts win over the Broncos.
Right, and I don't know if anyone really truly won that game, but I guess the record books will have the Colts as the winner in that one.
So let's start with. Right. Do you want to pick a winner for this week 6 matchup that we both describe as like a very unappealing?
I think the Bears will find a way to score something here. It just feels like this could be sayonara for Carson Wentz. And also, too, the thing with Washington right now, there's a lot of drama around that team between Dan Snyder claiming he has dirt on all the rest of the NFL. And then did you see the other day where Ron Rivera said that the main problem on the team was they didn't have
I want to put the audio clip. I even send it to you. Yeah, it was just a way to throw Carson Wentz under the bus. I want to find a clip because I just couldn't believe the way that he threw his quarterback under the bus. I have the clip.
I've never heard a coach do that before. Just throw their quarterback under the bus like that.
I have the clip. Well, let's hear what Ron Rivera had to say.
The teams in the division are farther ahead at this point.
Quarterback. The truth is that this is a quarterback-driven league. And if you look at the teams that have been able to sustain success, they've been able to build it around a specific quarterback.
Why do you?
He's right, but you shouldn't say that. That's just disrespectful. Carson Wentz may not be playing well, but he's going out there and putting his body on the line for your team. And even if he doesn't play well, he's putting. He's. I'm sure he's given it his best effort.
He's been decent tonight. 5 catches for 9 attempts, 55 yards. He was sacked 2 times.
Man, that's not great. But at least by modern NFL standards. In fact, the fact that we have a first half stat line of 5 of 9 for 55 yards in the first half of an NFL game shows why this game should not have been anywhere close to prime time. But I think it's just the role of every team being on prime time once.
But it's just I think the Washington NFL franchise, you can call it now Commanders, used to be another name in the past. I think they're doomed. They're doomed from top to bottom. They're doomed top to bottom because, as you said, Dan Snyder has dirt on the league, but it just shows that he is like a doomed NFL owner that does not want the league to succeed. He wants to, be the guy now against the whole league. So he shows that he's not a true owner that wants to have like a sustainable environment. And then you have a coach that threw the quarterback under the bus, and you have a quarterback that everybody was expecting to be a star, but for the past 4 years has not come even close to look like a true like a top 10 NFL quarterback.
Oh, absolutely. Ever since that injury, he just hasn't come back. And I feel like, going having a rush roulette of going from one team to the other, to the next. I just feel like after time that just destroys a player. Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Marcus Mariota, because remember, he had a really good second year, had 26 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. But then he broke his ACL against Jacksonville on Christmas Eve 2016. And he just never was the same quarterback. And also, he was going for different OCs every single year. And that, I think, really held back his potential as the Titans quarterback. And obviously he's had some success this year with the Falcons, but I think Carson Wentz, unfortunately, is on a very similar trajectory.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like it's just it's one of those, like, what could have been, Carson Wentz.
Right.
I mean, I count him as an NFL Super Bowl winner because he was on the roster and he played games on that Philly team. So he deserves
he's
to
like
be
the starting pitcher, basically. Like he went 6 innings. Like he put them in the position, and then Nick Foles came in to close.
Yeah. But we all expect him to be like, hey, if that's what he has sold so far, what could have everybody was expecting more, but he's just falling down. And I feel like, after this season, he is going to be relegated to a really good backup quarterback. He's going to be alongside Teddy Bridgewater, Jacoby Brissett, Marcus Mariota, a transition / good backup quarterback.
Yeah, I think, too, he might have just hurt his right hand, actually, as we're talking about Carson Wentz, because he's still in the game, but he was throwing the ball, and as he was throwing it, he hit one of his linemen's hands. He actually hit one of the Bears defensive linemen, and I think his hand kind of bent backwards. So he was kind of trying to. So if you on the TV right now, he's kind of walking around with his hand warmer, trying to, I guess, get feeling back in his hands. So that could certainly be a development for Carson Wentz.
Yeah,
but he's still out there playing. So kind of crazy that Lucky got injured just a little bit while we were talking about him. So and I think that's almost part of the problem with these Thursday games too, is these guys keep getting hurt a lot on Thursdays. Think about Tua got hurt on the Thursday, and of course Russell Wilson, he is banged up after last Thursday. I think having to play games this close together is not great for these guys, and what's already a physical sport. And while they almost had a touchdown, to Curtis Samuel, which would have been great because he's on one of my fantasy teams, but unfortunately Curtis Samuel dropped it, so still scoreless.
Yeah, I don't know what the solution is, because I think at the end, Thursday Night Football is just so hard because it's such a short week. I feel like if you are on a Thursday Night Football, you should be at a minimum on a 1 p.m. time slot to be because last week the Commanders, let's see, the Commanders and the Commanders, okay, they play at 1 p.m.
Yeah, because they play the Titans. Titans barely escaped.
And the Bears as well, but still, yeah. But but Amazon wants to have their solo game, because NFL TV, broadcasters, the best product is the solo product. The Thursday night, Sunday night, and Monday Night Football, because it's a standing alone game. But Sunday night and Monday night makes sense because it's close. But Thursday night sacrifices the team because you had short time to prepare for such a physical, demanding sport. It's not like basketball or baseball that you play every day.
Oh, I agree.
But so you got the Bears, I got the Commanders.
Yeah, the Commanders might be about to score here, so you might be that might be all it takes in this one. So anyway, let's move on to some actual games on Sunday.
I want to start with I was gonna, so the Titans are on the bye week, so they won. I say you came close to lose, but they got the win over the Commanders. So what is the state of the Titans? How do you evaluate their season now they're on a break?
Well, I'll say this: I think they still have a decent shot of winning the division because obviously AFC South is not very good. This definitely is not a team that's anywhere close to being title contenders. We have serious weaknesses in skill positions, particularly in wide receiver. Of course, Derrick Henry has gotten his mojo back. He's definitely going to be your focal point of the offense. It's not going to be enough. But defensively, especially up front, we're playing really, really well, especially against the run. Because you saw what the Titans did, not this past week, but the weekend before, to Jonathan Taylor, held him to 42 rushing yards. Of course, you get the Colts again next week. So if you can beat them again next week, then you're really in a great spot to potentially go on a bit of a run to the AFC South championship. But at the end of the day, what is that going to get you? The 4 seed, more likely than probably getting probably losing to whoever the 5th seed is. But hey, making the play. Hey, the goal obviously for any of these teams is to make the playoffs and then see what happens from there. So I think the Titans can do that. I really think there's been rumors this week that they're looking to maybe trade for a guy like DJ Moore for the Panthers. If they can swing that, they absolutely should. They need to do that, or maybe think about signing like an Odell Beckham Jr. They need some guys at wide receiver, especially with Treylon Burks being on IR right now. And that really stings because you were hoping he would be your AJ Brown replacement, and that obviously just isn't happening right now. Robert Woods has been okay, but it just hasn't been great. And obviously the rest of our team is just not deep at receiver. You need to do something, and something at that position. And I think I trade off the DJ Moore, especially now that the Panthers just fired their coach. They're kind of in tank mode. I think you would have to do something like that.
Yeah, at least win the division. I think winning the division should be the goal for the Titans.
Oh, yeah. I think if you do that, it'll be a decent season. But I know we've talked about this in the past. I mean, do you, in this type of situation, do you even want to win the division? Or would you rather lose it and get a better draft pick? Because, I mean, definitely the Titans, in addition to receiver, they need some linemen. Like, our lineman situation is not great, especially after Taylor Lewan went down for the year. I think Lewan, honestly, is done in Tennessee. Just too many injuries at this point. He's getting older. We need some younger linemen to get some better depth because we've kind of missed on some lineman picks. Like Dylan Rodriguez, for example, has just been a big bust. Of course, you try to pick who was the guy from Georgia, Isaiah Wilson, who didn't even make it to the regular season because, well, the dude couldn't stay out of trouble off the field. So John Robinson has really screwed up in the drafting of offensive linemen, which is really rearing his ugly head right now because you really need those linemen now, and we don't have them. So there's some serious deficiencies that this team will have to – they're going to pay for all year. So they're not going to win pretty. But I will give them this. They fight hard. They fight to the last play. And, that's at least what you want to see. If you know your team isn't the most talented, at least go out there and have the most heart. And you know what? I appreciate them for going out there and fighting. So, I'll continue to root for them, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I think the bye week's coming on a good time. There are three, there are the 3 game winning streak. They have time to rest and figure out. I think they can think about moves, but I think bye week, is a good time for them. So let's start with some games on the NFC side. The 49ers facing the Falcons in Atlanta. I think that it should be a not an easy win, but I think that 49ers should get the win. The fight for the division is tough. They're on the lead right now, but they have to win if they want to win the division.
I agree. I think the Niners will win this one. Jimmy Garoppolo, give him credit. He's playing really well, especially what he did last week at Carolina. That defense, of course, we know they have great talent on that defense. And I
One
feel like
thing,
the Falcons passing game is kind of falling apart in recent
one thing,
weeks.
one thing is coming to my mind is like why Jimmy Garoppolo took so took in a good way in a not a petty way being benched by Trey Lance, and I think the time he had to be benched took time, especially health wise, for his body to be ready for times like this. It was almost like he wanted to be on the bench so he had time to be ready, because I know Jimmy Garoppolo's health is not it hasn't been 100% for the past few seasons, but now he didn't had to start in the beginning of the season, so I feel like now he's more ready than ever.
I think you're onto something with that because he seems like he's much more mobile. He's much more just much like physically what I think a lot of people thought he was going to bring when he got drafted initially by the Patriots. And, you know, he's playing his way to be a starter somewhere next year. I
That's
would
why
imagine they're probably going to go
he's,
back to Trey Lance, but someone's going to bring him in as a starter.
and he's playing with no pressure because he knows he's gonna leave, and he knows Trey Lance the starter, but now he's kind of the savior of the franchise with no
Yeah.
pressure because they already have a
And
starting.
sorry. And also, I do have to ask this: does his teammates like playing with him more? So you think about it, when Trey Lance was in there for the first game and a quarter, they struggled on offense. And from the time that Garoppolo took over, they've played a lot better. I feel like they see Jimmy G as a leader, uh, and I feel like him getting benched may have caused dissension within the locker room that now obviously doesn't exist because, well, Jimmy G's back out there playing.
Oh yeah, I mean, and especially my and I feel like you know because when you and Colin Cowherd was mentioning that, and that's true. Offensive players like tight ends, wide receiver, but especially O line, you sacrifice so much of your body in the NFL. You want to be guided by somebody that knows what they're doing. And Jimmy Garoppolo was like, "I've been to a Super Bowl. I know what I'm doing." So it kind of gives more confidence to the offense.
Oh, absolutely. I would agree with that. And, this Niners team, the past couple of years, they don't win pretty often, but they kind of have a workman attitude, almost like the Patriots of the West. If you think about it, they play good defense. They like to run the ball. And of course, obviously, you got Deebo Samuel, who is tearing it up. Had a great game last week. I really think that, yeah, but for this game especially, I think the Niners won it.
Yeah, and I agree. So we both take the 49ers. So next up is an AFC matchup between the New England Patriots and the Cleveland Browns, both 2-3. We both picked the Lions to beat the Patriots, and the Patriots came out strong and destroyed the Lions. So do you think they can keep this good streak going? And the Browns, another Jacoby Brissett week.
Yeah, man, the Browns are so disappointing. You look at the talent; they shouldn't be 2-3, but they are, and it feels like this is this is the type of thing for the Cleveland Browns where they're going to start falling apart. And it feels like with Bailey Zappi that the Patriots have a quiet form of confidence. And Mac Jones, I don't think it's going to be back this week. I like the Patriots. It feels like the Browns are on a team that, think about something similar to the Niners, right? Like, I think the team wanted to stick with Baker Mayfield. Of course, you bring in Deshaun Watson, who, by the way, I did just see something on Deshaun Watson here. I need to pull it back up. A new lawsuit has been filed against Deshaun Watson in Texas. This was just broke as of, 55 minutes ago. I'm pulling up the tweet now. According to court records, a massage therapist says she was pressured into performing oral sex in December 2020 during the massage session. So, obviously, the story for Deshaun Watson is not going to die anytime soon. Which obviously is just another distraction for the Browns. It feels like this whole Watson deal has just been one big distraction. I think it's affecting the play of the team. Because everyone's just waiting for Watson to play. But even when Watson plays, that's even going to be a bigger distraction.
I mean, I feel like at least when he plays, we can analyze his on the field action. Now we only analyze his lawsuits. So that's the distraction makes it bigger. And I feel like I think this game's going to decide. I feel like this game's going to even decide if Deshaun Watson plays or not this season. Because if you think about it, if they lose this game, they're going to be 2-4. Then do you think it's worth it for him to play in Week 11 when they're 2-4, or they just should?
No, I think at a certain point. Or you could make the argument, even if you are 3-9 at that point. At that point, you at least want to put Watson out there to get him a couple of games with the new team. And then so you can hit the ground running in 2023. So you could do that. But that's an expensive $230 million investment that, do you want to risk that when you're 3-10? Especially a guy that we know has significant injury issues. And also, can we just speak on it? But with them and the Broncos, the $200+ million investments have not gone well. The Broncos invested $245 million to Russell Wilson, and they can't even score a touchdown. They struggle to score at all. It's insane. I think it's a reminder that, yes, the NFL is a quarterback league, but football is never just going to be a quarterback game. You always have to have everything else, including quarterback. It's imperative you have quarterback, but you can't just have, if you put Peyton Manning on Vanderbilt, right? Vanderbilt all of a sudden, actually, let me backtrack. Let's say you put Hendon Hooker on the Vanderbilt Commodores. Yeah, Vanderbilt's probably going to be a little bit better, but Vanderbilt isn't going to be number 6 in the country like Tennessee is right now because Hendon Hooker wouldn't have all the players around him. Same thing with this situation right here. I don't know. I think I wonder if it's going to start giving these teams pause before giving these record-setting contracts.
Yeah. It's a good point because especially if you think about it, those contracts even hurt the ability to get who's the best quarterback in the NFL? Almost unarguably. No, of all time, Tom Brady, right?
Oh, of all time. Okay, yeah.
Okay, is he the winningest? Tom Brady is the winningest quarterback in the NFL, right?
Yeah.
Did he take more money or less money? Especially when he was a veteran player. Less money. Because he wanted to play with better roster. Because he wanted to have a better team. All those big contracts only hurt those talented quarterbacks. And not only you give the examples of Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson, but if you think about it, the Green Bay Packers with Aaron Rodgers have not been the same since he got his big contract.
Right. He's throwing to Romeo Dobbs instead of Devontae Adams, who is now in the desert. He doesn't have any stars around him.
Yeah. So, you have to, because I was thinking about it when I was, driving to work. I was like, listen to this contract. Like, do you want to get all the money that you could, or do you want to get the more success that you can? Because if you think about it, you have a short span on the field career, but if you get good legacy, get Super Bowl wins, or even get to a Super Bowl, get division wins, get to be remembered as an all-time player for a team, then you'll set up for life.
Oh, for absolutely, yeah. And obviously, I'm not going to begrudge anyone for obviously wanting more money, because obviously, you got to take care of your family, got to take care of your future. But if you want to win first and foremost, then you're going to have to sacrifice a little bit. And I think that's a wise lesson to learn from this situation.
Because for players, still unfortunately, NFL is not Major League Baseball, where there is a salary cap, so teams have to juggle where to allocate the money to play the players. In baseball, you can pretty much pay anything you want. Players take advantage of that. But in football, in the National Football League decided there's a cap for salary. So you have to kind of like do almost an equation to see where you allocate. So as a quarterback, you have to really think about, okay, I know what I'm worth, but does the team's going to have the ability to give me weapons if I get this amount of money? That's what should be in the minds of all quarterbacks.
Right. Yeah. And then at the very minimum, at least, they're not 5 of 14 for 57 yards like Carson Wentz is right now. Also, Justin Fields has 89 yards passing as well.
But they got the field goal.
Just a miserable game.
But the Commanders are on top and at halftime 3-0. So
man, they're combined. They're 2 of 12 on third down. Both teams are 1 of 6. This is just wow, just unbelievable that this game is happening on prime time. I mean, Roger Goodell is somewhere punching a window with how bad this game is going.
And also, he's getting frantic calls by Jeff Bezos.
I just saw this statistic. The Washington Commanders had 4 punts, right? And they only had 5 completions. And they lead. Oh my goodness. It's just
tomorrow Jeff Bezos.
Bears' first 6 possessions, 3 punts, an interception, turnover on downs, and halftime.
I mean, Jeff Bezos is going to have a call with Roger Goodell, be like, next year, you better find better games for Thursday Night Football, or we're going to leave. Because it seems like Thursday Night Football is a product no TV wanted. I remember NBC wanted nothing to do with it. I don't see any TV wanted to get. That's why Amazon got it, probably, because ESPN or Fox or CBS NBC did not want a Thursday Night Football game.
Yeah, honestly, I should have put it on. I know there's some college games on tonight. Well, there was supposed to be the Guardians and Yankees, but that did not happen. Oh, wow. Oh, actually, you know what? Screw this game. I'm putting it on Baylor, West Virginia, because that game is tied heading into the 4th quarter. It's 31-31. I'm putting on some actual entertaining football here in the background. Where I'm done with Washington, Chicago. Give me some Big 12 midweek action. There's also UCF Temple, but UCF's up 56-13 in the middle of the 3rd quarter. So Josh Heupel's former school is pouring it on the Owls. But yeah. So it's So
let's move on to the green matchup in the NFL between my New York Jets and the Green Bay Packers. And the Jets are 2-0 on the road, and the Packers are 2-1 at home. I don't know. I'm optimistic about it. The Jets are. I mean, I don't think they're gonna win the division, but I don't know. They are on a good fight for a wild card.
Yeah, and this is fascinating. Green Bay, they're not in a great spot right now. They barely beat Bailey Zappi. They lose to the Giants. Give me the Jets. I can't believe I'm saying that. I can't believe but the Jets have been kind of surprisingly good this year. I think Robert Salah is getting some stuff turned around. Zach Wilson's played all right. And I think the Packers just have some significant deficiencies, especially at those skill positions. I think if you look at the Jets, they have a better receiving core. And I can't believe we're saying that. They have better running backs. Breece Hall is starting to come into his own, and that really just balances off of Michael Carter. Sauce Gardner had his first interception last week. Give me the Jets.
I mean, give me the Jets too. G-E-T-S, Jets. My
Jets.
If they win, I'm definitely going to put my Mark Sanchez jersey. I have a Mark Sanchez jersey.
I'll say this. Mark Sanchez is a really good commentator. He did both of the London games. He does really good in the booth, in my opinion.
I feel like Mark Sanchez, Antonio Romo, I think they I don't know, they were really good quarterbacks and they could have won a Super Bowl, just didn't click, I mean,
yeah.
Let's not forget, Mark Sanchez went back-to-back AFC Championship games with the Brady and Manning era. Let's not forget about that. That's an impressive achievement.
That's very true.
AFC Championship games, playing with Brady and playing with Manning and the playoffs.
Very true. I like that. Those Jets teams were really good. I don't know if this Jets team is as good as those teams.
I mean, a lot of people praise the defense that Rex Ryan, developed, but a quarterback, kind of the manager, and he managed back-to-back AFC Championship, teams.
I'm very interested in a couple of weeks when the Jets play the Bills. I just want to see how far is the gap between Buffalo and New York there. Because Buffalo feels like they're one of the two best teams in the league. But, it could get very interesting. All right. Yeah, so now I've turned it on Baylor, West Virginia. It's Baylor 37, West Virginia 33. Mountaineers have the ball, 13 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So that's going to be an entertaining finish. That game's probably going to go into the 50s by the end of it, it feels like. But anyway, so we both go with the Jets. What's the next one up on the card here?
Oh, the AFC South matchup. While the Tennessee Titans are on the bye week, the Jacksonville Jaguars facing the Indianapolis Colts. Whoever wins this game is going to be, closer to the Titans, especially the Colts. If they win, they surpass the Titans because they have a tie over the Tennessee team. But the Jaguars are being so inconsistent. They had really good wins and really bad losses. If you get it, I mean, they won, shutout versus the same Colts and on the road versus the Chargers. But last week they lost at home to the Texans.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Jacksonville just, I feel like what we saw early on was fool's gold. I think I bought them a little too early. Jacksonville is who we thought they were. I mean, in Indianapolis, yes, they've had some horrible issues in Jacksonville with the Jaguars. They usually take care of them in Indianapolis. In Indianapolis, it feels like they're starting to get some stuff together. I mean, granted, their offense played horrible at Denver, but you do have to credit them for gutting that game out and winning it. I think their offense will play a little bit better against Jacksonville. Give me the Colts to win this one, and that sets up a pretty big one next week in Nissan Stadium.
So who you got?
Indianapolis, the Colts.
I got the Jags. Jags have been Colts kryptonite even last season. So give me Jacksonville.
Yeah. But it's usually in Jacksonville where that happens. In Indianapolis, the Colts usually beat them, but we will see.
So now we have a matchup, probably a wild card matchup for, between the wild card potential teams between the Minnesota Vikings and Miami Dolphins. Give me the Vikings. The Dolphins have been, even though they're undefeated at home, with this two kind of, situation, I think, give me the Vikings.
Right. With Skylar Thompson, And Skylar Thompson was good at Kansas State, but NFL is a whole different deal. Minnesota's playing pretty well right now. I think Kirk Cousins is having a really good year. And it's not a primetime game. So give me the
Yeah.
Vikings. So Kirk Cousins wins non-primetime games. And this is one of those. So the Vikings, they could go, to 5-1? Yeah, because they're 4-1 right now. Maybe the Vikings, they've had some really tight wins the past couple of weeks. I think they'll keep that trend going.
So now we have interesting matchup between the 2-3 Cincinnati Bengals and a 2-3 New Orleans Saints.
How many people in the crowd will be rooting for the Bengals here? Because that's Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase returning to Louisiana.
Yeah, I mean, probably a few people. Some might make the 1 hour drive, and is the comeback of Joe Burrow to a stadium that he'll always remember as the stage where he won the national title. But now it's in hostile territory because the Saints, they're gonna, I don't know, they're still fighting for the division. The Tampa Bay is 3-2. They're the second one in the division. I don't know. I mean, give me the Saints. They're gonna fight for the division because this year's Tampa Bay is not as good as last year.
Yeah, the Saints just have once again. It feels like a receiver. It's crazy how many teams this year feels like they have serious deficiencies at receiver. We talked about the Titans, the Packers, the Saints too. And Michael Thomas, he's been back, but I don't think he's the same guy. The way they're using Alvin Kamara this year, it doesn't make sense. Think about Alvin Kamara does a lot of his damage when you throw to him out of the backfield. And this offense this year just has not been utilizing him in that way. And the Bengals have been struggling. Their offensive line hasn't been great, but I think with coming back to the state of Louisiana, I think Joe Burrow is going to go off. He's going to kind of prove a point. So, give me the Bengals.
Yeah, I agree. I so you have. It's going to be an interesting matchup. I feel like I think it's going to be a high scoring game.
I definitely could see that. I'm really interested to see what the crowd does here because I was just kind of as a cursor. I typed into Twitter Joe Burrow Saints, and basically there's articles from New Orleans media outlets saying if you root for Joe Burrow, if you root against the Saints just this one time for Joe Burrow, then you aren't a true Saints fan. You're an LSU fan, and I feel like there's going to be a lot of inner turmoil there because I really haven't looked at that game. I haven't really thought about it, but I'm like, oh wait, that's Joe Burrow returning to Louisiana. I gotta see how that's going to play down there. So that's a huge game for the state of Louisiana.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even though LSU itself not doing well, I mean, at least they have something to be looking forward to this weekend.
Yeah, because I'll think about this in a couple of weeks, especially if Tennessee goes on a run here. And Hendon Hooker ends up being a starter somewhere. When he comes back to the Titans, that's going to be tough. Of course, the Titans have to play Peyton Manning twice every single year. So, it's just kind of one of those deals when your favorite players go to the NFL. I mean, just like a Derrick Henry, right? I hated him in college. Now he's one of my favorite NFL players of all time, even though he's a Bama. So it just is what it is. The allegiances change at the professional level. But anyway, what is next?
Oh, we have a interesting matchup. Those teams play in the Super Bowl in the year 2000. The Baltimore Ravens facing the New York Giants, and the Giants have a better have a 4-1 compared to a 3-2 Ravens. The Giants are very surprised of the season. I didn't expect them to be that good.
I mean, I knew Brian Daboll was a good coach, but are the Giants actually good? Because they might be, and I kind of hope they are. Because the Titans would lose to them, but you look at the Titans' losses: 4-1 Giants, 4-1 Bills. Like their two losses aren't too bad right now. And the Ravens, to me, have some serious inconsistencies, especially on defense. With this game in the Meadowlands, Giants fans are super pumped right now. I'm going to go with the Giants here. I can't believe I've gone with both New York teams this week. I went with the Jets over the Packers. I'm going with the Giants over the Ravens. I think Lamar Jackson will make big plays.
I'm going to Ravens.
It feels like this Giants team is playing really good football right now. Daniel Jones is playing the best football of his career. I know Saquon Barkley got dinged up, but it just feels like Brian Daboll is going to find a way to get around this Ravens team. And I think this Ravens team, if you think about Justin Tucker had to bail them out last week. And the Bengals had some stupid play calling down on the goal line. The Ravens could have lost that game. I think this is not a very good team. Give me the Giants.
So I got the Ravens. So next up, we have, a matchup, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers is the end of Mike Tomlin's era. They're not going to be a 500. They're going to be a sub 500 team. So the last thing that Mike Tomlin holds, which is never having a losing season, I think this year is going to be done. And I think if the Buccaneers gets a good win, which I think they're going to have, is going to even probably solidify last season for Mike Tomlin.
I agree that the Steelers just losing TJ Watt was a killer for them. And obviously their quarterback situation isn't great. You're trying to kind of let Kenny Pickett get some experience. Not good if you're a coach in the hot seat. So I agree the Buccaneers should win this one. But the Buccaneers, they still really aren't that impressive to me. So we'll see.
So now going to the 4 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Brazil time slot, we have the Los Angeles Rams hosting the Carolina Panthers, which just fired their coach Matt Rule. And I actually had the opportunity to watch that game because it was the first game in over probably almost 20 years, a regular season game of the NFL was broadcast in a public TV channel, was broadcast by Rede TV. It was they got the broadcasting, images from CBS, but it was a okay broadcast. Well, they got a really good play-by-play announcer, Marcelo Dubois, and a good analyst. I don't know his name, but the other girl was, she was more like an entertainer than an analyst. But it was a decent broadcasting. But it was good to see, on a public TV, not on cable, NFL in Brazil. That was good. Even though the game was bad, and I was, like, God, why they couldn't put a better game? But it still was nice to watch in the public TV. But, the Panthers are doomed, right, Nick? I feel like, their season, that's why they fired Matt Rule. They're going to tank and now on to 2023.
Yeah, I agree. They're going to be one of the top draft picks. I feel like they've tried to do what the Colts have done, but unlike the Colts, it's gone even worse for them. Trying to bring in all these other quarterbacks like Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, it hasn't worked. You're wasting Christian McCaffrey. You're wasting DJ Moore. Your defense is atrocious. It was time to get rid of Rule. I think he'll make a great college coach somewhere. It kind of reminds me a lot of a Saban. Okay, he's not Nick Saban. But think about what he did at Baylor, right? Baylor was a complete mess when he got there. He turned them around. Some coaches are just meant to be college coaches. Matt Rule is one of those guys. He will land somewhere in the college ranks. I think he could be a Nebraska coach, honestly. And I think he could do well there. But it just clearly wasn't going to work in the NFL. Sometimes that happens. For the Panthers, it's going to be a while before I think they're back to any sort of contention. It's just I think they're going to have to trade away some of their pieces to get some draft capital. It's just not a great situation. Really, if you're a Panthers fan, you should probably find something else to do the rest of the season. And in this one, especially, I think the Rams, they've been struggling. They haven't been playing very well recently, but this is a get-right game for LA. I think Matthew Stafford will have his best game of the year, even if Cooper Kupp doesn't play. I like the Rams.
I like the Rams too. I think they should win, and because they have to win. It's like the same thing we said to the 49ers with the Falcons. The Rams have to win those kind of games because the fight to get the NFC West division is going to be a tough.
Right, especially with the surprise that we've seen with Seattle, which I believe should be the next game, right? Arizona
Yeah,
at Seattle.
yeah. Seattle Seahawks facing the Arizona Cardinals, and both 2-3. Seattle has been a pleasant surprise. Which do you think when Tom Brady left? Bill Belichick. A lot of people said that Tom Brady was going to win that divorce, and as of right now, he won because he got a Super Bowl with Tampa. Has been back-to-back playoffs, and the Patriots and over the past 2 seasons has been to our wild card, which got destroyed by Buffalo. And this season doesn't look like it's gonna go to wild card again. But I don't know. The divorce between Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson is still up for grabs.
Right, and we'll have to see if Russell Wilson can get himself together in Denver, which I still think there's time for him to do. There's a lot of talent over there on that offense, and plus, I still think Seattle's is really limited. But I think Pete Carroll's definitely playing his way into another season as the head coach of the Seahawks. I think Pete Carroll has earned an opportunity to get to draft a quarterback next year and to kind of start over on that rebuilding process. So I certainly hope he gets that opportunity because Pete Carroll isn't one of the all-time greats. Think about it, he's one of the few coaches that's been able to win big at both college and NFL. So I really think that he should get that opportunity. In this game, Arizona, obviously, you got Kyler Murray. He's the better quarterback, but he's been kind of up and down throughout the year. And it feels like the Cliff Kingsbury era in Arizona is going to start going off the rails a little bit. I like Seattle. I think it's going to be a close game. It could be the most entertaining game. Well, not the most entertaining game, but it'll be an entertaining one.
I got Seattle too. I agree 100%.
I like Seattle.
So now
the big one.
The big one. Right? The big one. Probably like a lot of people were saying could be the AFC Championship game. Bills and Chiefs. We all remember how they match up in the playoffs last season. One of the greatest games
You have
ever.
13 seconds, Buffalo. Do you have 13 seconds?
We all saw the 13 seconds for Patrick Mahomes. It's an eternity.
Right. I'll say this. I think the one thing that that Buffalo has here is they have an extra day of rest. Remember, Kansas City played on Monday. So I think that's going to be give them a bit of a positive. And remember, last year during the regular season, Buffalo came to Kansas City and won pretty convincingly during the regular season. Now, Kansas City won that playoff game. But so for that reason, I feel like here the Bills are playing better right now. I'd like the Bills to eke this one out, but I anticipate this is not the last time we'll see this game this season. The playoffs will be a whole different deal.
Wait, you got the
Bills.
I got the Bills too. To win this matchup. Now, I think this should have been this is not a primetime game.
Well, the primetime game we have Sunday night is also pretty good as well. I'm not going to lie, because we got those Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles, and man, they've been talking a lot of trash back and forth all week. It's been kind of entertaining reading all of the trash talk between these two teams. This is going to be a fun atmosphere. Like Philadelphia this weekend, you have the Phillies in town with the Braves. Of course, we're going to get to that here in just a minute. And then we have the Eagles hosting the Cowboys in a huge division matchup. It's going to be a fun weekend in Philadelphia.
Oh yeah, a weekend that can kind of set the year's sports for the city.
Oh, for sure.
I got the Cowboys. Give me the Cowboys.
It feels like Cooper Rush just has some pixie dust, right? I think the pixie dust's going to run out. Give me the Eagles. I think Jalen Hurts. They're going to find a way to move the ball in that defense, and that's really the strength for Dallas is that defense, and that defense is really really good. But I think Jalen Hurts is playing at another level this year. I think they'll find a way. It's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be easily the best Sunday night game we've seen so far. But give me
I could only imagine our friend Draven Fine on Sunday night.
Yeah, honestly, could we see previews of both the AFC and NFC title games this weekend?
More the AFC. The NFC, I think there's going to be an NFC West team in the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, that certainly is true. All right, we have that Monday night game. We have those Broncos that we have talked about already. They just look horrible. For some reason, we're going to have to watch them again in prime time. Like, obviously, the NFL is anticipating them being way better than they are.
Yeah, everybody expected to be a good team, exciting team, but I guess Nathaniel Rackett is not as a good coach as everybody expected.
Yep, and they go to LA, and the Chargers they haven't been great, if we're being honest, but they're better than the Broncos. And the Chargers, they've struggled in big games, it feels like. But I think right now, especially with some of the injuries to the Broncos, it feels like Justin Herbert should have a really good game, a really good night, and find a way to pull off this win. So I like the Chargers.
I'm gonna go with the Broncos. I can see them pulling this off. The Chargers always lose those kind of games.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. That's why I hesitated before picking that. But I could see this thing going either way. And hey, the Broncos might finally figure out that offense one of these days. When they do, they're gonna be dangerous. But I'm waiting. So we're gonna see who wins this week. I haven't won in a couple of weeks, so hopefully I get back on top. Or we'll see if Gus continues his domination.
You got the tie. You got the tie. At least we tied 8-8.
We definitely made that improvement. All right. Now let's quickly just get to some baseball. Yeah. So we're in NLDS, ALDS mode. Now we only had one game today. Astros won 4-2 over the Mariners. They're up 2-0. Unfortunately, unless we get some miracles from Seattle, it looks like Houston's gonna move on to the ALCS relatively easily. New York was supposed to play Cleveland tonight, but that did not happen due to weather. I guess they'll play it tomorrow. But honestly, I personally expect the Yankees to move on with ease in this game, in this series. I think we're heading for an Astros-Yankees series pretty easily. Is there anything else to say in the AL? Because I feel like, especially with the way Seattle kind of fell apart yesterday. Well, not yesterday, but Tuesday in the game one, giving up a 7-3 lead. That was basically all she wrote in that series.
I mean, if you think about it, the Mariners already reached their goal this season, was making the playoffs. Did something they couldn't done in 2 decades. And they not only make the playoffs, they won the wild card series. I know the Seattle fans are going to be frustrated because the way the series starts, which they had a big lead and blew it with a walk-off home run. But the Astros had a better roster. They might won that game, but I think the Astros have a better roster to win the series.
I agree. I think maybe I hope Seattle can win game 3 just to give them a win in the series, but that certainly is no guarantee. But I think regardless, we're heading for Astros Yankees. Do you see any way Guardians or Mariners pulled out?
I don't. Yeah, Cleveland. I mean, I remember I picked the Tampa Bay Rays to sweep.
I did as well, and we were all wrong about it. But Tampa. I think that was almost more Tampa Bay not showing up. I mean, that game on Saturday that went to 15 innings, and neither one of them could score until the 15th inning. I was just, man, that was some wild baseball to watch. But yeah, that's obviously you're not going to be able to do that against the Yankees. You got to be able to score.
But back to the Seattle and Astro series. It's going to be really cool Seattle fans watching a home playoff game, because remember the Seattle win over the Toronto Blue Jays was in Canada. So
Right.
finally Seattle fans are going to watch a game at home, a playoff game at home. That took 2 decades.
Yeah, that'll be a nice scene to see. But I just don't see this being a very interesting series at the end of the day in terms of
I mean,
the potential.
we all knew that Yankees and Astros were going to be the matchup for the ALCS. I mean, I think the Guardians and the Mariners made the best they could their season. If you ask Guardians and Mariners fans, they're like, we got more than we hoped for.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of disappointing teams over on that side of the bracket too, and definitely those two teams should not be disappointed with their seasons at all. Looking over at the NL though, the NL is very interesting. Both of those series are tied at 1.
First of all,
the Braves.
I mean, I know the Mets blew, and we all picked to watch, but I don't know that Joe Musgrove substance incident. His ear, looking bright and a little ready. I don't know. I mean, he had a good performance, a magnificent performance, but it was just a weird scene. But the Mets blew it. And I think with all the investment Steve Cohen made, it was frustrating. And Mets might see a lot of players leaving. Sal Lugo, Jacob deGrom, to name a few.
Yeah, the Mets just. What can you say? It's almost like the Chargers. Kind of mentioned there a few minutes ago. It's like if they can, they will find a way to lose. It's just unbelievable. Like it was a disastrous train in slow motion all year. Then you get swept by the Braves, lose the division, and I think I was the only one last week on our 3-person panel to pick the Padres. And I'm just like, it feels like the Mets are about to complete the choke, and that's exactly what we saw. Like nothing I saw in this weekend series surprised me for the New York Mets. This is what they do. And that's a hard pill to swallow for the Mets. And you got to find a way to change that narrative. And it doesn't matter how much money you spend if you're Steve Cohen. It's all about that culture inside the locker room. It's all about finding a way to get over the demons. And they're going to have to wait another year to do it.
Yeah. But back to the matchups, both series I tied one apiece. And, I mean, it's just, I feel like the Braves have a more chance to win than the Dodgers, because I think the Padres came out strong last night.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd rather be wanting to go to Philly here or rather going to San Diego. Obviously, the Braves are going to have to go to Philly. That's going to be a tough atmosphere. But it feels like to me the Phillies use it's like, if you have a gun and like you empty your clip out, to shoot a couple of rounds at first, and then you have nothing left. That's what it felt like Tuesday afternoon. I felt like the Phillies used up a lot of magic to win a game 1. They had some really big catches. They had timely hitting on 2-out rallies. Yesterday, they had nothing offensively, and the Braves were the ones who were able to play the solid baseball to win it. And the Braves, I just feel like, have a better pitching staff. And I just think that's going to win out over the course of the series. I think it could go 5. I wouldn't be surprised if this doesn't come back to. I wouldn't be surprised if this comes back to Atlanta. But I just feel like now the Braves are equipped to win those type of games. So I think the Braves could win this 1 in 5. Now for Padres, obviously the Padres are very talented. It's kind of surprising how well they're playing the Dodgers to me so far. But once again, I just think the Dodgers are the far more talented team. I would be really surprised if the Padres ended up pulling this out.
I mean, I think the Padres are going to give more hard time, as I said before, to the Dodgers. But at the end, I think the Dodgers and the Braves are going to have a really, really heated matchup for the NLCS, especially with, they had a the 2020 matchup that Braves fans really wants to forget.
Right. Well, at the very least, we made up for it last year. So, yeah, I mean, that sucks, but we made up for it in 2021. So now 2022 is the ultimate grudge match. Who was the best team in the early 2020s? Braves or the Dodgers? And especially now that they have Freddie Freeman, I think that will add another element, heat to this series. And obviously, we have Matt Olson, who has stepped in and is playing very nicely. So, but obviously, you got to get there first. And, it's neither one of these teams have a guarantee, in a 1-1 series going on the road. So, we'll see what happens. Obviously, both of those games start tomorrow. Game 3s in Philadelphia and San Diego. It's going to be insane atmospheres.
Oh, I agree 100%. Especially Padres and Dodgers, because they are so close to each other. It's a California matchup, 2 hours away. So a lot of Padres fans are gonna make the drive to LA, especially because a lot of those Padre fans were Chargers fans that are still bitter of losing the NFL team to LA. So this is the ultimate revenge.
For sure. Dude, there's just an insane. So I've got this Baylor West Virginia game in the background. So Baylor right now down 40-37. So Baylor was driving. They threw an interception to West Virginia. So West Virginia gets the ball back, and now West Virginia just threw it back to Baylor. So both teams have just exchanged interceptions. Baylor now has the ball back, down 3. 3 minutes left in the game.
Oh,
That's
wow.
it. Yeah, JT Daniels. Unfortunately, wow, he just threw it straight to him. What is he doing? That's why Stetson Bennett started over you. If you're JT Daniels, but anyway, yeah, craziness in the Big 12.
Not surprised. I mean, Big 12 and, crazy matchups, not a surprise. And, to finalize American topics, we had the Damon Green, Jordan Poole situation. They got in a heated altercation that was a fist fight, but Damon Green did not get a suspension, only a fine. Do you think that was fair?
Yeah, I mean, we saw the video of it, and there's no excuse for someone to do that. I understand it's the competitiveness of the sport, that you're going to get heated, but you got to remember, you are at work. You don't yeah, like when I'm at work, right? Like I want to make sure stories are good, and sometimes like production might mess up or whatever. I'm not going to get in their face and start hitting them, right? That's insane. Like Draymond Green shouldn't do that either. And it's interesting that the NBA did not step in here. And you got to wonder, does the PA have too much power in this situation? And also, too, from the Warriors' perspective, I feel like the team should step in and discipline them as well, like for team chemistry, to show like, hey, we're not going to tolerate this. I know you're all getting paid a lot, but we are a team first, and you have to, kind of treat each other with a certain level of respect.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like there should be some sort of professionalism. And I mean, I know the Warriors don't wanna. I think they didn't punish Damon because Damon's such a leader and he is in the contract talk, so they don't want to seem like punishing the guy and give more hard time for this negotiation. But still, what kind of message this gives to the locker room? But NBA and drama always go hand in hand.
Right. I mean, they got to do something, right? It's a long regular season because they start here, I think, next week. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'll be watching off and on, but I don't really get into it until we get towards the postseason.
So. Oh yeah, I mean, the NBA should really. I mean, we talked about this before. Should really start their season on Christmas. I mean, because from October to December is just irrelevant. It's just some people might fall. I mean, it goes the same with the NHL. I know you put on the lineup. The NHL starts as well, But do you think NBA and the NHL should really have shorter seasons that starts in December? Because from October to
Yes,
December, they're just irrelevant.
I absolutely agree that there has to be a way to um like still get the meat of the season across. And I understand you make more money the longer you go, but it just doesn't seem like October and November basketball really matters that much. So, but anyway, we'll see what happens with the NBA. Also, you did mention this as well. NHL, shout out to them. They did start Tuesday night. The Predators are playing their first game right now. They're losing 3-0 to the Dallas Stars. So, you know, we'll have to catch up with our friend Dylan Becker at some point to see how hockey is going. And definitely when we get to Stanley Cup for sure, because that's time of year too where I also watch hockey, but it's just not right now because right now it's football season and baseball. So
Yeah, I
and the
mean,
end of NASCAR as well. So it's just not. There's only so much sports I can watch at one time.
and speaking of NASCAR, that's your hot take, right?
Right. I've been talking about this for a few weeks now. It feels like ever since the NASCAR started the playoffs this year, it's just been kind of a series of cascading controversies. And honestly, I feel like half of them wouldn't exist if we didn't have the playoffs. Like this past week, you had a situation where Cole Custer, teammate of Chase Briscoe was fighting Kyle Larson for the last transfer spot into the playoffs because Christopher Bell in the 20 car was in the lead and ended up winning the race. So he ended up advancing to the next round because of the win, which was going to knock out either the 14 of Briscoe or the 5 of Larson. And what happened is Briscoe's teammate Cole Custer kind of stopped in the middle of the track and blocked 2 other drivers from passing him and let Chase Briscoe pass those other 2 cars, which got Briscoe into the next round. So it was race manipulation. And now Custer's being penalized, the whole team's being penalized. But NASCAR is saying that at the time when they made that decision to do that, Briscoe was already in, so they're not going to remove him from the playoffs and put Kyle Larson, who was a defending champion from last season, back in. I mean, it's just there's been one situation like another. I referenced the William Byron thing earlier with Denny Hamlin. That happened in the playoffs. Of course, between that, you have these concussions. It just feels like Talladega last week was really, really good. But outside of that, there's just been every weekend has just seemed to have brought a lot of controversy. And it feels like the NASCAR industry probably wants the season to end. And speaking of series that probably need shorter seasons, NASCAR might be one of them. I think 36 races is too much. They didn't used to race as many races in one year. Back in the 80s and 90s, which raced like 30, 31. And I think that especially considering that, honestly, like even as big of a NASCAR fan as I am, well, West Virginia, inside the 10-yard line, 47 seconds, it's 40-40. West Virginia trying to win the football game. But anyway, it just feels like it's way too long. It's just not as interesting right now. And honestly, having playoffs doesn't make it that much more interesting because at the end of the day, it's not like these playoff drivers can just race each other. You got to be next to each other, and you got all the other drivers are still on there. I think they'd be better off shortening the season and trying to compete with football as little as possible.
And speaking of football, finally the Chicago Bears, the game has a touchdown. It was scored by Chicago Bears after JT Daniels pass deep left to Pettis for 40 yards. The Bears are up 7-6 heading to the fourth quarter.
Yeah, so finally, I'm sure Al Michaels was very happy to see that.
Yeah. So my hot take is I feel like with all that excitement, all that all the excitement, all that environment that was Wednesday in Sao Paulo for the Brazilian Cup final, Brazilian Confederation should really rethink the way Brazilian Championship is structured with the same way the Premier League is done by whoever got the most points win. Because let's face it, Palmeiras is going to be champion by week 35, week 36 at best. So the end of the tournament is going to be probably maybe one or two spots in Libertadores and one or two spots for relegation. That's it. The title is going to be decided. So they should go back to a playoff mode, not a team when there was in the past from 1990 to 2002. But I think it should be a 14 playoff, because if it was like a 14 playoff, then it will be exciting. Then it will be like a true champion, like a final, with more excitement than it is right now. Because now with Palmeiras having a 10-point lead, they're going to be the champion by week 35, week 36 at tops. I know probably Palmeiras is going to be champion at home and the fans are going to be excited, but they're going to face like an opponent that probably by that point in the tournament are going to play for like maybe a Copa Sul-Americana spot, or maybe going to be played for nothing. So it's not going to be like a true final for two teams colliding to win the championship. It's going to be one team only needed a win to get the tournament, to get the championship, and another team who are there basically because they have to. I don't know.
It's kind of interesting. Like in your case, we need playoffs, and in my case, I'm like, we don't need playoffs. So it's just like some sports need them, some sports don't.
Yeah, I think
soccer needs them, doesn't.
NASCAR makes sense to not have a playoff because again, it's such a week-to-week kind of point aggregation that whoever gets the most points win. Like I know, like Formula One, I know Max Verstappen now got the title. Some weeks before the end of the end of the season. But let's remember, last season was a doozy. Last year was a true exciting race between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton for the championship in the last race of the year. So I think NASCAR should be whoever gets the most points win. But in soccer, because soccer is a team sport, and team sports needs playoffs. In America, all team sports are playoffs because whoever two teams colliding. Because in racing, you have all the cars, so it's hard to do playoffs because you have playoff racers competing with non-playoff racers in the same track. So it kind of creates it doesn't balance. But in soccer is a team sport, so a final should be a one team versus another team who made it to that point, either for number one versus number four. Like Brazilian championship should be like a college football playoff, number one versus number four and number two versus number three, and even they can play on neutral sites because it'll be more exciting. All games decided in Maracanã, then it will be but wherever they will create this structure, as we discussed, soccer as a team sport should all be playoffs, and NASCAR as like a more like a driver situation should be like for points.
Exactly, and because otherwise, if you keep playoffs in NASCAR, you see a situation like this past week where you have a non-playoff driver directly influence what happens. Or like, what if you have a playoff driver? Let's say he wrecked a non-playoff driver at some point earlier in the year. Non-playoff driver is like, you know what? It's time for payback during the playoffs. It's ruined his entire season. So it's it's just the whole thing is too chaotic for playoffs. We need to go back to a simple season-long format. Yes, sometimes that means someone's going to win the championship 3 or 4 races before the end. Your racing is not always about having a Game 7 moment, and because when they do happen, they should be special. Like what we saw last year in Formula One with Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, that was special because that just came together naturally throughout the course of the year.
Yeah.
So I wish NASCAR would go back to that.
And in my argument, it's like since the Brasileirao went to points mode instead of playoff mode, I only feel like was only one true, really competitive season that went to like the last week with a lot of excitement. That was the 2011 Brasileirao, where you had basically last week you had two teams, but by by week 35, week 34, you had four teams competing to the title. Then it's straight down to three teams by week 37, and then week 38, the last week, was two teams. That was the only true exciting competitive Brasileirão. Other than that, was teams deciding on the week 35, week 34, even winning the games that were versus their opponent of the title. So yeah, so that was my argument. So that's it for episode 45 of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. That we celebrate 1 year anniversary of this creation of this podcast. I'm really proud of the only podcast that you have two analysts talking about two different countries with so much in-depth analysis, and I'm really proud of our product, and hopefully that we can keep this strong in year two.
Oh, absolutely. Let's go. And hopefully we'll start off year two with a Tennessee win over Alabama. Let's get it.
Let's go, VOLS.
Let's go, Vols.
Lava, heated like a sauna, penetrating through your